So, first of all, why don't you start off with telling us about why did you think that a book on Wicca needed to be written? What are some of the myths that this book attempts to dispel?
Mhm. Well, first of all, I think I should say that this is not my first book on Wicca.
Mm-hmm.
My first book on Wicca was Beloved Witch,
Okay.
which was very well received. Then I've also written short stories concerning Wicca,
Mm-hmm.
revolving around Wicca. Then I've also written Beloved Witch Returns, which was also, it gave a lot of information on Wicca.
Mm-hmm.
Though both Beloved Witch and Beloved Witch Returns were autobiographical.
Okay.
Now, this book I wrote, I think that is what comes to my mind. Why did I write it? One is that, well, I am Wicca. Whatever I write, it comes out Wiccan. And the other reason is that I think we are going into a time when Wicca is being abused because it has become very popular. I don't know if I have made it popular or not in our country, but it has become extremely popular, and people, the new agers, I would call them, the new age people, those who are working on the esoteric lines professionally, they are, uh, let's say, abusing or misusing the term Wicca.
Okay.
They are the new agers. They are going into all sorts of things which I myself would not be able to perhaps describe completely, but I know what they are: angel therapy, tarot, candle therapy, this, that, and the other.
Mm-hmm.
And they are saying that this all comes under the umbrella of Wicca, which is completely untrue.
Okay.
Now, I, as a, let's say, hardcore Wiccan who has given my life to Wicca, I would, and I do, object to that.
Okay.
And what happens is that sometimes, not always, sometimes, these people, these new agers, um, when they're doing it professionally, and most of it is professional, I mean, they're charging very good money for it
Mm-hmm.
from unsuspecting people. Um, well, their whatever their prophecies or predictions are, or whatever they set out to do, um, it doesn't fructify, it doesn't mature. And then these people who are being led up the garden path, they say that we want our money back from these new agers.
Mm-hmm.
And then these new agers say that, no, no, I won't give you your money back. And then when their antecedents are looked into, they say, oh, we are students of Ipsita, which is completely untrue. I don't know them from Adam. And they do this in order to save their skins. They do this because I feel that I am the most, in this area, the most respected. I have the most credibility.
Right.
And they try to save their skins by using my name.
Right.
So I thought that the time had come when the real Wicca, in all its aspects,
Mm-hmm.
should be down on paper.
Okay.
And people can read it. They can know what the real Wicca is.
Mm.
They can, I have given it almost like a, almost, of course, there are stories in it. There are
Mm.
pages from my diary in it.
Mm.
There are very interesting incidents in it. But there is also, um, you could call it the manual of Wicca.
Yeah, correct.
Wicca really is.
Yeah.
So people will not confuse these new age um, professionals
Mm-hmm.
with what I am doing.
Okay.
So there was that reason.
Okay. Okay. So, can you briefly talk about the origins of Wicca and how has it evolved? In terms of like evolved for the modern day Wiccan.
Mhm. Well, the original Wicca goes back centuries.
Mm-hmm.
Some authorities have said that it goes back 50,000 years. We still find um, images and little statues of the mother goddess
Mm-hmm.
in various parts of the world. Archaeologists have dug them up
Yeah.
in all parts of Europe, even in India. And they say this is the mother goddess, and the mother goddess is whom we take to be the mother of Wicca.
Okay.
So that is one aspect. The other aspect, of course, which comes from the Talmud, the very ancient Jewish scripture, is that Lilith,
Mm.
the goddess Lilith, who was also called a demoness,
Mm.
she was the first mother or the source of Wicca. There's a very humorous story that she was the first. I shouldn't say a humorous story. It was, I mean, to all purposes, in the Talmud. She was the first wife of Adam. She was a very free and independent woman. She disliked Adam's domination, both mental and sexual. She went away from him. She left him. And as perhaps many people do about their wives or ex-wives, he started spreading wild rumors about her, amongst them that she was, let's say, shacking up with another man, being the angel Samuel. And he didn't waste much time. He married or started living together with Eve,
Okay.
who was more suited to him because she was not as intelligent as Lilith.
Mm-hmm.
Lilith was the first, I would say, the first goddess or the first demoness of Wicca. And the story goes on. I have given a bit of that story, which brings us to another point that Lilith may have been the first feminist. The first feminist, feminism, which we talk about so much today.
Mm-hmm.
She brought the seeds of it into society.
Right. Right.
And so there's that story. And then, of course, there is the fact that Wicca is not just in the Talmud or just in the Bible or just here or there.
Mm-hmm.
Wicca was a global phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
In each country of the world, at some time or the other, we find the mention of the witch.
Right.
In Japan, she is called Dakini Ten.
Mm-hmm.
In Tibet, she was Kandroma, who flew through the air. In Greece, she was Diana, the chaste and the fair.
Mm-hmm.
And a very interesting point is that we know that Wicca was at one time a global phenomena because from Diana, the word came down to our part of the world. But unfortunately, it was no longer Diana. They changed it to Diane, Diana, Diane. You see, Diane.
Yeah.
It's such a positive thing. The goddess Diana became the Diane.
Right.
So you perhaps can come to the question that who did it? Who was responsible for this?
Mm-hmm.
And that has answers too.
Okay. Okay. So, this uh, how the fact that Wicca is a global phenomena brings me to the next question. which is the idea of Wicca is essentially rooted in Western esotericism. So, what significance does a book on Wicca hold for readers in India?
Well, that because people might think of that,
Mm-hmm.
I have gone into the witches of India. There is a chapter on the witches of India. Now, nowadays, of course, it's a different phenomenon altogether, where women are mostly in villages. They are dragged out because men want their property, or for some other obscene reason. They are paraded through the village. They are, abused, etc., etc. And these are the witch hunts, which are still continuing today.
Yeah.
And I have gone into the villages in the past, trying with these women in some way or the other, but I find that the men dominate them. The men dominate them. So that is one thing. But if you go back historically, if you go back to the past, you will find that India did have Wiccans or witches also. The witches were not called Dians, of course. They were called yoginis. The yoginis of India go back to about, as far as we know, go back to about the 10th or 11th century. And the place which I have researched the most regarding these Dakinis, regarding these yoginis, is Hirapur in Orissa.
Okay.
Although we used to have 9 yogini temples in India at one time, now only a few of them are still existing, and the yoginis in their little niches still stand. Of course, some of them are much eroded by the elements. Some of them have been damaged by certain invasions into India. I will not mention who invaded for religious purposes. But Hirapur, which I have researched thoroughly, I find that all the traits of the Wiccan or the witches you can see in any part of the world, they are very prevalent. They are very prominent in Hirapur. There are 64 yoginis. It is called the Chosat Yogini Temple or Mandir. What is very strange there is that it is one of the yogini temples in India which does not have a roof. It is a complete temple, a roundish temple, but it is hypotherial. That means no roof.
Okay.
And the theory is that the yoginis flew in and flew out. That is why there is no roof. Okay. You see? Just like in Tibet, they were called the Kandromas. The witches were called Kandromas, and they were called the flying goddesses. So why this, theory? The yoginis flew, obviously. The Kandromas flew. This is all in our part of the world. Yeah. And in the West, you have the flying witches.
Right.
On the broomsticks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, why this similarity?
Yeah.
And it leaves no doubt in my mind, at least, that in India, we did and do have witches, apart from myself.
So, but the word witch has a very, I mean, over time, it's developed a very negative connotation. But the term yogini, when you're talking about yogini doesn't have a negative connotation. It has such a positive, uh, aura about it. So,
Right.
Yeah, I mean that is just an observation. But
Mhm.
the other thing that I wanted to ask was, like, witchcraft or magic. These terms are always associated with superstition. But when you talk about them in your book, you approach them with this logic, uh,
Mhm.
very very practically. So can you elaborate, talk a little bit about that?
Well, one reason you can say I took up Wicca in India in a small way in the beginning was because I was very much intent on trying to do something
Mhm.
to banish this word superstition or banish superstitious ideas in our people
Mm.
from Wicca or witchcraft or let's say even magic.
Mm. Yeah.
Unfortunately, the word magic, the jadoo tona, these words have very negative connotations in our country. And I would blame, without trying to offend anyone, I would blame a lot of our holy men and tantrics
Okay.
for doing this. Again, it's a question of the New Agers, people who try to take advantage of this,
Mm.
who do gruesome. I'm not talking of the New Ages, but some of the tantrics, they
Mhm.
do gruesome things.
Mm.
They kidnap, and worse, in order, well, for self. That's all. For commercial reasons.
Yeah.
So I was trying to, in some way, bring to the fore the real esoteric, the part of it history, part of it science, yes, part of it even science. And I have given a special chapter in this book, in Way of the Witch,
Mm.
on the scientific aspect of Wicca.
Yeah.
So I would say that yes, even magic,
Mm.
or tantra definitely,
Mm.
the real tantra, I mean, the real tantra has in it points, has in it facets which are scientific. That is why I have said in this book that actually there is no quarrel between science and Wicca. If I want to enlarge, I would say there's no quarrel between science and the esoteric.
Mhm.
Because according in Wicca at least, we go by the Hermetic rules, the 7 Hermetic laws, which include the new physics.
Mm.
There is, I mean, if you want, I can just read out the 7 laws given by Hermes, who
Mhm.
was at one time called in Egypt Thoth.
Mhm.
He was called in Greece by another name, not Thoth, Hermes, and some other name which I forget now. He was called the Raven by the Red Indians. He was um, supposed to be a person who knew the logic and the science behind the esoteric.
Okay.
So I have given these 7 laws which he had put down: the law of mentalism, the law of correspondence, of vibration, of polarity, of rhythm, of gender, and of cause and effect. Now, this chapter 8,
Mhm.
I feel is very important for the reader to read and understand, because they will be able to align the esoteric, if you call, or if you want to just go into Wicca, the Wiccan path with the physics part. the scientific part. So actually, I do not find any quarrel between the two.
Okay. And finally, what made you start your journey on this path? I mean, where did it all begin?
Well, it began many, many, many years ago. I was in Montreal at that time in Canada. My father was a diplomat with connected with the United Nations. And my mother, she was of the old Bengal aristocracy, connected with both the royal families of Kuch Bihar and Mayurbhanj.
Okay.
So I had, you could say, in that way, a very, what should I call it, a very proper background. And, but I think at heart I must have been a bit of an adventurous, because a family friend, she belonged to this association or a club which delved into Wicca. They met over the weekends in a chalet in the Laurentian Mountains, and they did both the practical and the theoretical side of Wicca. It was something like an academy. It was very, in that way, intellectual, but they also practiced what they had read about.
Okay.
So I was still in my teens at that time, and I asked my father that, do you mind if I join them? Because they were keen that someone from India should be a part of their association. At that time, they had only about, I think, 13 or 14 members from different parts of the world. Our guide or our leader, you could say our principal, she was a Spanish lawyer, a very erudite woman. We had a vice principal who had been a very efficient nurse during one of the world wars. So we had very qualified people. We had a young actress from Hollywood. It was a very, very colorful group, and they were extremely serious about Wicca and about the facts about this strange and forgotten craft. So anyhow, I asked my father that, do you mind? Because, it doesn't really, being a diplomat and being a witch may clash. Yeah. So he himself, he was a very erudite man. He had a large library, even in Montreal, we kept a large library. Yeah. And he said, no, if you feel that it is helping your mind, if you feel that different worlds are opening up, you go ahead. My mother was a bit hesitant, she being more conservative, and she listened to me, what I had to say, and she said, I have no objection as long as you can bring honor to yourself and to your country and to women. But, so what was the but? She said, who will marry you when you go back to India? In our country, no one's going to want to marry a Daini.
Like I'm not sure how to ask this question, but in the sense that so you trained to be a witch, or are you?
Yes, I trained to be a witch. The first year or so, the first year actually, was academic, where we learned from books, where we were given lectures by our teachers. We had guides and teachers from this group, the group of 14. And they were extremely, as I said, extremely erudite women.
Right.
So the first year went in that. After that, it started becoming more practical, just like in a college or university.
Yeah.
You did the practicals of it. Then you went out on your own. The first few years also, your personal life had to be very strict. It was like being in a monastery almost, even though we lived at home. Every weekend we were there at the chalet, as we called it, the place where we learned. We went to the chalet. If there was any certain ceremony, we went to the chalet from home. It was like a little, comfortable little hostel up in the mountains, beautifully done. We stayed there if necessary. But it was all women. I mean, it was a witch's sanctuary, you can say. And after the first few years of extreme, following the rules, you can't break the rules. If you break the rules, you're out.
Okay.
So after the first few years, then they give you complete freedom.
Okay.
If you are a true Wiccan, you are on your own. You will not break the rules. You will follow what is meant to be followed. You are a scholar then. You are a scholar. Of course, there were other branches to choose from, like you could choose shamanism, you could choose the Vodun faith, different branches of the esoteric, but I chose Wicca. So our head, we called her Carlotta. She said she asked me, what do you want to specialize in? I said, I want to specialize in Wicca, in witchcraft.
Mm-hmm.
She said, do you know what you're saying? Do you know what will happen to you when you go back to your country? They will not accept it.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I don't care. I want to be a witch. Let them not accept me.
Mm-hmm.
I know what I want. So she said, she stood up and she shook my hand. And she said, all right, Ipsita, be a witch, and all success to you.
Okay.
So I say today, after so many decades,
Yeah.
I say that yes, I have kept my word, I have kept the discipline, I have kept the honor, and I'm a successful witch.
Thank you so much, Ipsita. It was lovely speaking to you.
Thank you. It was lovely speaking to you too. Thank you very much.